Elon Musk is lying. End of the video. Now, the thing is, I did not really like doing this modeling compared to all the other ones I'm doing on this channel, simply because whenever I do some modeling with this, I tend to go into some self-hypnotic process myself and to get into some deep trance to access the state, to at least to try to go into the head of the person I'm modeling and seeing what I can see from the inside or how do I feel. And it felt quite bad to attempt to be in Elon Musk's shoes, not pretending I can understand what he's living or his level of success or any of that, but even just from the purely communication level, it felt like a weight in my chest and I didn't really like it at all. So I still noticed a few very interesting things, but it was kind of really heavy. I think from what I have seen so far that Elon Musk is alternating between mild and severe levels of depression, depending on the time, depending on what's happening, but I think he's really touched by all the pressure he has been facing for the last 30 years probably, and that is quite heavy. So at first I noticed I had a lot of trouble to figure out all his internal processes. If you have seen my other videos, I'm usually pretty accurate and pretty good at figuring out, oh, this guy is more visual and this one has some timeline strategy, whatever. With Elon Musk, I had a lot of trouble to understand, see, hear, feel anything. And at first I thought it was because I was simply too far behind in terms of intellectual abilities, which is, I think, the case of most human beings on Earth. I don't think many people are on his level of intellectual abilities and genius thinking. But then I also thought maybe it is just about the communication training he had and that he's not letting anything get through when he's communicating, like he's hiding everything. And politicians are all trained into that. They are all trained to have some encore gesture or some encore way of talking whenever they are being asked some uncomfortable question. And I noticed he was always doing this kind of movement whenever he was being asked something uncomfortable or something like this, which is a very clear encore for emotional self-control. So I thought maybe it is just because he's too trained. He has been trained by two world-level coaches, like every big politician, to measure what he says and to always control what he says.
I mean, I hope it's not too measurable, but I just think it's important to the it's important to the function of democracy. It's important to the function of the United States.
And what are the limiting factors on progress?
But then I discovered it was probably not. It may be part of it, but it was probably not that. Actually, he is an Asperger. He has an Asperger syndrome, which I didn't even know before watching all the videos, and which means that he had a lot of trouble communicating with other people. His brain was advancing at light speed and faster than most people's brain, but he had trouble communicating and entering social situations at the same time. So I was like, okay, that's why I have trouble seeing something, because obviously an Asperger's brain is something we don't really understand right now. It is way too complex to figure out all the intricacies of how their synesthesia works, how the senses are linking themselves together into their brain, all of that. So it made it clear for me. However, despite that, I could notice that most of his thinking is processed through inner dialogue, at least from what we can see from the outside when we model people through their physiology and the way they are behaving. He's processing most of the questions he's being asked and all the thinking he does through internal dialogue, through auditory processing, which I noticed a lot of geniuses do. A lot of geniuses are primarily auditory thinkers who have this ability to reframe and question themselves in very clever ways. And for example, whenever somebody has the head tilted on the side like this, or is starting to tilt the head on the side and look down on the left, or has the eyes going like this on both from right and left, it is, I would say, always a sign of auditory processing.
A specific thing, or was it just the inevitability of our future?
I try to convince people to slow down.
But I had never seen somebody going that deep into auditory processing. He can stay for like 5 seconds processing like this non-stop. So I can't even comprehend the number the level of questioning he's doing into his own head, all the things he's processing, all the thoughts he has, it must be completely overwhelming and probably part of why he's so pressured and so depressed quite a lot of times, I think. But what you can pick from that is that if you are never using your inner dialogue for anything other than criticizing yourself, then it might be a very good moment to start using your inner dialogue whenever something uncomfortable is happening in your life. Use your inner dialogue to use clever questions. Questions like, how can I make that something positive? How can I turn this problem into a positive outcome in the future? How can I make a brighter future out of this thing that is happening right now? He's always extremely geared toward the future, always looking toward what is going to make civilization move forward. How can I make civilization advance faster and get to the next step? So he used to also self-sacrifice himself in the process of, well, if it is going to make mankind or civilization a better place or make it move to the next step, then my life doesn't mean anything, or I can just forget myself, which I think is very bad strategy from an emotional well-being standpoint. Now, when you want to change the world, maybe there are some things I don't understand at my level. It is possible. I would still not recommend that level of self-sacrifice. It seems to be really way too extreme for me. There is, however, something we can use if you want to develop some thinking abilities to develop your level of success right now and grow your company or your business into the next level. There is a moment where he is being asked something and he replies with the kind of mental strategy he is using to solve problems, which at that level is quite interesting, because I think everybody watching this right now, nobody, including me, can have an understanding of the kind of problems people of his level are dealing with on a daily basis.
What I mean is, I think the code should be on GitHub, you know. So then, so people can look through it and say, I see a problem here. I don't agree with this. They can highlight issues,
right.
Suggest changes in the same way that you sort of update Linux or Signal or something like that, you know?
So I see a problem here. I don't agree with this. Highlight issues. And there is something really interesting here. I see a problem. So when you always start by something you see that is not going in the direction you would like to go, something that you would like to change. Then say to yourself, and that may be common sense, but still say to yourself, because most people only use their inner dialogue for negative things. They never ever use their inner dialogue for finding solutions. And the solution here is starting from the standpoint of, I don't agree with this, which you hear a lot of motivational speakers talking about. All the, I will prove them wrong, or I swear this will not be my legacy. All those phrases, they are self-talk. All of that is a self-talk and are things that people use to motivate themselves and encourage themselves whenever they are lacking courage, motivation, or anything in between. So I don't agree with this. Always start by affirming seriously for yourself when you are not able to let a situation go by. And when you train yourself to do that, you are going to do it on things that seemed impossible for most people. But what if this money problem you have right now, or this girlfriend problem you have right now, was starting from the presupposition that this is not going to be the end, period. If you start from there, at least there is a pathway. If you start from, oh, my life is fucked, I cannot do anything, then yes, you cannot do anything, for sure. So start by using your inner dialogue in a positive way, in a way that is going to lead toward directions. Then highlight issues. This is a very visual term, highlighting, even if I think he's doing most of it in an auditory way, but highlighting. One thing I used to do with all of my problems is putting them on paper, writing down a paragraph or the first thing I can think of that I don't like. And quite often people think they are confused about their life. They're not. They'll just have 3-4 things that are just confusing at the moment, but they're pretty simple. Put them on paper and highlight the key terms, highlight the keywords of what you don't like. You're going to see that when you highlight those keywords, it starts to become easier to deal with it, because you start to shrink and reduce the problem to very simple and effective components, simple and actionable components, instead of seeing the problem as something abnormally high, big, and outrageous. So highlight issues and suggest changes. This is the most important here. Suggesting changes in the way he is using the words here and the slight change of tonality he is using when he is describing that idea, that strategy. Suggest changes is also using a different vocal tonality. What I noticed from him is if you can pick a moment where you have succeeded at something, a moment where you did successfully build a company or solve a problem or handle the conflict in your relationship, anything that was bothering, if you had to describe what happened when you actually solved the problem, what kind of voice tonality do you use? Any of those aha moments, what kind of voice tonality do you use to actually describe what happened back then, or what kind of voice were you using when you were into that phase and when you found the best solution that solved all the problem? Go back to this and use the exact same voice tonality to read all the words you have highlighted or describing mentally all the things you have highlighted as being negative. And you're going to see that when you describe negative things with the voice tonality of something that worked, you are going to find new solutions, even if they seem weird, even if they seem counterintuitive. But the biggest innovations of mankind were, I think, always counterintuitive, and the biggest breakthroughs you're going to have in your life will be counterintuitive to some degree until you get to the next phase of life, whatever. When you use those new vocal tonalities, those successful vocal tonalities, to describe and to talk about the problem you have, actually your brain is going to connect the dots and to connect resources with problems. And you're going to open pathways that you maybe have had trouble before to access. In the end, it all comes down to the mastery of your own internal processes. Obviously, this is just a very tiny, very small thing that Elon Musk is doing, and there are way more that he's doing that we can even comprehend. I'm not claiming at all I can comprehend everything he is doing. It is just a quite interesting thing to notice that every genius has at least one thing we can notice and replicate, or start applying into our lives and notice what can we do from that, with that? Where can we go from there? If you want to learn how to develop a kind of successful identity from the inside, shape yourself from the ground, build yourself and build your self-confidence to reach all the projects you have, all the business goals you have, all the financial goals you have, you can download down in the description on the first link. There is a 7 days free challenge that you can go through. It is 7 hypnotic tracks to follow and to change that will be used to change all your limitations and elaborate a much better mindset so that whenever you are faced with some struggles, with some problems, you will find clever solutions you never thought about before.